Hello, hello! First stream of the new year, I'm going to be going through the sketchbook that I used from actually May 2018 all the way until, well, I used like it to sketch one last thing in 2020, but basically just 2018 to 2019. Let me get this adjusted real quick. Let's see. I'm going to try to carefully move y'all down just a little bit. I have a really precarious setup right now, unfortunately. I only have one tripod, and I'm trying to stream live to Instagram at the same time. I've had issues for whatever reason with my connection on doing that, but oh well. It'll just have to do. I'll do my best to keep an eye on any comments between the both streams, assuming that the Instagram one is working, but yeah, otherwise, I guess I'll just get going. I still need to check on and write the final number for what number sketchbook this is, because for whatever reason, when I work on a sketchbook, I have to go like completely in chronological order. I don't think that was entirely true of the first sketchbook I had, but I got that when I was like 11 or 12 or something, and then I didn't finish it until like 2, 3 years later or something. But since then, I know I'm like at least in the 20s or so. So this is probably number 21, 2, or 3. I'll have to check, but I picked this cover because I wanted to continue to do more watercolor. I usually have a bunch gifted from me. It's more how I get them, by the way. This one isn't anything fancy. It's just something that was gotten from a gift, and I think it was from like, oh yeah, Barnes and Noble. Hardcover, wire bound, 88 pages, acid free paper. It's pretty lightweight, so it's not really meant for watercolor, but I thought it was cute and I thought I would try to do it anyways, so let's scooch it over and get started with the first side here. Page number 1. Nothing too special, actually. I was gifted from my high school art teacher the same watercolor palettes that I've been using since 2015, 2016. I pretty much only was using this one by Prang, which is some sort of like vintage. I mean, it's cheap watercolors, but the packaging doesn't look like anything that I've seen when I tried to like Google Prang watercolors now, so I assume it's vintage. As you can see, I am basically out of most of the colors. So here's the familiar mixes that I was doing. Then I wanted to try this one, which I hadn't really used, by Graumboucher. I'm not sure if this is any higher quality, but it is definitely older. All the pans initially looked super crusty like this, but I kind of liked some of the weird blue-green that was in this, and just was trying to, you know, mix some different colors. And since I wanted to watercolor, even though this is pretty thin paper, I did some watercolor. Actually, this isn't watercolor, this is gouache that my sister gave me as a Christmas present in 2017, and I've barely used it because I don't know how to use gouache. And it's only 3 palettes, and it's like Winsor and Newton. Sorry, it's only 3 colors, and it's Winsor and Newton, so I get kind of nervous trying to use them, but so yeah, I just did some random studies in like green and used some leftover colors on it. This was a sketch for a painting that I wanted to do because there are 3 actors who I really like at the time and still, who all have birthdays around to, each other's, and they all also have, they're all also in, we're good friends, and we're in a lot of horror movies together. So Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, and then I think it was Christopher Lee who had a birthday around them. I never got very far into it. And now we're into March. And these are drawings. This is actually fan art and a good excuse to practice some more dynamic poses. This is a monk character from a show I watch called Critical Role. She's kind of cool. I don't really think I did a good job drawing her, but it was good practice. Something I always fall back on is sketching from photos that I find, just as practice to get more variety in my faces and better proportion. So some of these were timed, and then I slowly took more and more time on each one. And this is in June now, beginning of June. And again, I just kind of, sometimes just need to do something to start, so I just did some washes and didn't even do like an initial sketch like I did for this one. But if I don't like something, I'll just I used to just marker it out, or I'll just like tape over with some paper just to make interesting shapes. I still think this one turned out pretty good. Yeah. And then you can see some sketches off to the side here for drawing ideas. This was requested by my friend Fergus, who commissioned me to do a couple more drawings that kind of matched a drawing I had done in 2016 of Cad Bane, which was in black and white with a little bit of red, because he put stickers on his car, and he's always been supportive of me and my artwork, and would do a sticker on for my Redbubble shop. So yeah, that was really cool of him. I appreciate it. I don't have the final drawing was on a separate paper, so it's not going to be here for this tour. Some other compositions that I was gonna maybe figure out. Kind of a bad portrait, but I mixed a really cool purple, so there's that. Exploring more of those ideas that I had on the other page, and then trying to figure out something for this. I'm not really sure what I was going for, but I think I had just seen Onibaba or something, so I was just thinking about like wheat fields and floaty cloaks. Again, throwing around ideas just willy-nilly. I knew I don't remember if this was for an Instagram redraw or not, possibly, but, oh, this is probably really hard to see because it was bright yellow, but, I had an idea of just a very beautiful woman, against a night sky with the moon and maybe like some Luna moths, so there's some floating around the moon here. I'm not sure what these things are, maybe where they could have been, but I knew I wanted something interesting, dynamic with her hands on her face and very serene. So I did a quick sketch of this, but I just kind of didn't like the pose. And this is from June now, until I finally came up with this, which I really liked. And actually, I have on the table underneath all this paper, going right now as a final painting finally, because it's been so long. But my mother was very kind and posed and helped me with some of the positioning a little bit so I could get a better idea. Some color tests. And this is me, because I always feel like I need some sort of logo that isn't just my signature, which probably any human being on Earth can copy. So I tried to figure out a bunch of ideas, but I don't know, I'm not that good at lettering per se. Some studies, completely in watercolor, of items on my desk: scissors, this weird little toy that I stole from a kid in 2nd grade, pen, ancient little knife cutter thing, a metal fidget spinner that I got for free when I worked at a movie theater the year before, and then just some random faces from imagination. And let's see, we're in July now, middle of July. Eiffel Art 64 on Twitter and here on Twitch does Sunday draw-alongs. This was the only one I ever participated in. So it was based on a photograph that he had found and posted. I think it turned out good. This was based on my own photograph, I think, of some plants nearby where I worked. And then this is my left hand here. So that's me, and you can't see it on my skin anymore, but shortly after I had started doing this sketch and did this one, I burnt my hand really badly. Without noticing, I only knew just because it was so red on this huge line across my hand and a little bit, I think, on my fingers on the espresso machine at the place I worked at before. So I was really bad at boiling milk. But I really liked this study. I focused mainly on difference between warms and cools. So I had a lot of teal and a lot of like this magenta-y pink or like a really hot red. And I think that kind of helped me a lot. And then let's see, right at the end of July, I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, and I made a trip out with two of my best friends to the aquarium, which is always amazing. I used to go there a lot when I was really little with my grandpa, and it's just, I mean, I know the whole place by heart, and it's still the same animals, but it's just so beautiful and such a peaceful place to be. And I don't remember if it was both or just one of my friends' first times going, but I thought it was worth, commemorating. So I sketched some ideas and thumbnails of being there, thought about how I wanted composition and color. And I take a bunch of photos every time I go to the aquarium, just because it's amazing and a great opportunity to, find your own reference, get really weird lighting, and paint some cool clownfish, which I have for stickers still up in my Redbubble store right now. So I took the photos for these and did studies kind of going kind of loose, especially because this paper cannot take that much water. As you can see, it's pretty warped. But I had a lot of fun with all these studies, and I really regret not doing this on nice paper, but here's the final piece I did of me and my two friends just hanging out in this next to this amazing neon fish tank. Two other studies, another clownfish hiding an anemone. One of the walkways that you can go through it's like a hallway, and then you look up and there's a bunch of like ocean lights, and sometimes you can see some of the fish like swimming through there. And then some like big seaweeds and kelp. And another study that I did based on a photo, really, really rough and messy. This is in August now, of some little daisies, not sunflowers, but daisies that were kind of springing up next to this road that I used to walk to and from work and home every day. And again, it was height of blackberry season, and I really could have done a better job and might have redo it later, but that's my favorite part about the summer. Where I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, we would just get free blackberries by the dozens. This was just a really weird sketchy page, and I was kind of feeling, I don't know, emotional or something, and I was trying to like sketch out a comic. I can't really read my own handwriting here, but this was September 2018, and the job I had became extremely grueling because we lost a couple of people and couldn't hire them back, so I was waiting tables like constantly. I think from about that point I was doing 6 days a week every day, sometimes with a break, sometimes without much of a one, but honestly it's weird, but that was still my favorite spot to be. This is really light and hard to see, but this was a sketch of one of the churches, the church that I could see from just outside the restaurant. I mean, like, you would walk outside, go down the street a little bit, and then there was another place you could sit and eat, and I tried to sketch on my break, because I knew I didn't have enough time to walk home. And then that was it until September. This is from probably sketchdaily.com, which I use a lot for figure drawings, just focusing on getting back into it, back to rhythms, more detail, understanding of shapes. And that's pretty much all I did for a little bit. That's all I really had time, so I would do like 30-second studies for each one, just in pen, just to keep it loose, really easy for me to see. Just kind of struggling just because it had been a while since I was so consistently drawing. And sometimes I'm just not always satisfied with quick studies I do. These ones are a little bit nicer from mid-September when I was watching Critical Role, I think, or something on YouTube at least, just to get natural poses, the hands, face, expression. It's kind of not a bad spot to study from. Same thing, just kind of going through, practicing bodies, using some of the pens that I just had lying around. And the beginning of October, I don't think I actually had this dream or anything, but I had an idea almost right away of this image, so I did very, very minimal sketches of what I wanted, and it was just this young person in bed dreaming this awful nightmare about this woman who came in through the window, and this woman she was smiling, and she was beautiful, and she had this fancy shiny crown, but she just couldn't stop crying, so she just was flooding the room of this poor kid. And I didn't really know what else to draw, and I was like, well, why not just like continue the series, right? So a couple of thumbnails of what happens next, and she's just flat out crying and just flooding the whole room, and this kid just like is being thrown around all over the place, and they don't know what to do. I'm really proud of how I rendered the curtains because I had no practice of painting sheer stuff before, so that was a win. And both of these illustrations were done with just black watercolor and like a micron pen and some Sharpie or something. And again, I wanted to continue the story. I wanted it to have something happen. So this kid, amidst all this awful chaos and this really terrifying entity just in their room, just kind of reaches out and gives comfort. And I thought something about that was really nice. And around that time, towards the end of the year, because this was finished in November, a friend of mine reached out to me and asked if I would do some work for him and the nonprofit group he was a part of called Honkfest West, which is an event held every year in Seattle, Washington, throughout different neighborhoods that celebrate local marching bands, kind of. So there's a lot of different styles there, but it was fun. I didn't get to go because I was sick during the event, but I did some initial sketches trying to figure out how to fit in their logo with some of the basic ideas I had. And then I jumped back to the final piece in this illustration, which was kind of weird, honestly. I didn't really know how to end it, but I just felt like she was just so drained that the room drained away, and she was just left alone, and there was no rest of her body, but she had finally found some sort of peace. I don't know why, but I thought there would be like weird tendrils in this like mimic shape. It was supposed to be like a little better of a composition than it was, but I just like, went for it. Of this like S shape going through the page. That was whatever was left of her insides, and then her wet hair on the floor. Definitely a weird one, but kind of nice, and for the first time in a long time I did a series of illustrations. It's still November. I'm not really, too in the habit of drawing still, so trying to keep up with it with figure sketches. Again, probably sketchdaily.com. And then I wanted a new icon, but I have such a hard time comprehending what I look like and understanding what I should look like. And then I launched my Ko-Fi page and tried to do some sort of illustration for it. I thought Ko-Fi would be pretty helpful in the fact that I hadn't started commissions before, which I do now have open. But I needed another way other than just Redbubble to try to make some cash, basically, for my artwork, because that is something I've been trying to push for a long time, since 2015, I want to say. So these are some sketch ideas. I don't know if I have them on any of my socials anymore, but I still use Ko-Fi.com and I draw as I'm still there. You can basically act as a tip jar for me. So for the price of 1 cup of coffee, you know, you're not buying anything from me, but it's not as expensive as, you know, trying to buy a shirt from Redbubble, or buying probably the same price as buying a sticker from there, actually. But, you know, it's just a way of, you know, tossing me a coin if anybody wanted to support but couldn't afford to do much. So I thought that was a good idea. It's still up and running, and I quite like the platform too, because every amount that's given through Ko-Fi goes directly to the person you're supporting and not to funding Ko-Fi themselves, although they do take donations, obviously. But I really like them just because they listen to artists' feedback quite often. And this is me remembering I have colored pencils and like feeling like, oh, because I own these, I'm obligated to use them. So I did some studies and felt kind of warmed up, and then worked through some more ideas that I had for that Hongfest West. And this has actually wound up being pretty darn close to what I wound up doing. I won't be able to show you the final pieces as I don't have them in my sketchbook here, but they're all over social media if you're curious. So I was just thinking about what kinds of instruments would be really common for a lot of the folks playing excuse me, in the bands that would be there, and just thinking about, you know, what's the most basic and common imagery that says Pacific Northwest, Seattle area, you know. So I thought of Rainier and pine trees and just a beautiful sky. Random thumbnails, and I was kind of taking a break from drawing for a long time because that was, let's see, middle end of November, and then a few weeks later, a friend of mine took me and my sister on a little road trip, maybe an hour away to a different city. It was really refreshing. We were there to pick up car parts for him, but we just kind of made it a hangout thing. So I sketched thumbnails that I thought I would draw of some of the weird stuff we saw. The town was oceanside, basically, so it was windy, beautiful, very cold. But there's a lot of cool old buildings, and one of the things we saw when we were driving by was like probably leftover from some sort of parade during the summer, but it was just this huge fish on wheels just sitting outside somebody's like farm thing, which I thought was really funny. And so we like pulled over, took some photos, and just like, I just really wanted to repaint it for whatever reason. In the end of the year, I did some figure drawing while I was on a ferry back from Seattle at some point, sketched some random stuff on my desk, and I drew a seahorsicorn, I think. It was like some sort of spell jester from Critical Role Cast, and I thought it was a really cute idea to have like this super pinky teal little sparkly seahorse unicorn. And I think it came out pretty good, despite being on, you know, not very good paper. And then 2019 rolled over, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll draw some more fan art. So I did some sketches to draw Jester, and then didn't go anywhere. And then my friend Siri got me into Red Dead Redemption 2, so I was hanging out with her for the first time in a couple years, and we were spending a lot of time together and just playing through this game. And she was like, Nate, you're so good at drawing. You should draw me some fan art. And I was like, haha, okay. So these aren't very good, but this is an attempt at Trelawney, Hosea, who I really, really love, and then John and Art arguing Arthur. I just call him Art for short, I don't know why. And yeah, I just started drawing a bunch of cowboy stuff. So this was some of the girls gossiping, which was an idea that I had, some color studies, trying to figure out which color palette I wanted to use. And then this was the final drawing that I had traced over onto my final painting, which I don't think turned out good. It was really bad values, but it was fun. And it was nice to draw an inspiration from Westerns again, because in 2016 I watched The Good and the Bad and the Ugly for the first time, and that like blew my mind. And I'm a huge fan of Ennio Morricone's music now, and I still listen to it all the time. And you've probably heard me play it on stream this year, actually. So I was doing some horse studies, which is amazing because I never draw animals. And then I went back to what I was being hired for and started to think about, Seattle skyline, how the logo would fit in, what kind of colors I want, if I wanted to put where it takes place listed and do like 3 different places or 3 different designs for it or something, and it just kind of went back and forth. Because it was happening not until June later that year, but it's the end of January. I got this assignment or idea passed to me from him in like September, so I kind of needed to get my butt moving. But I did more horse studies, and then my friend Faye, who has since quit drawing to become a writer, props to her for doing cool new things, met up with me and took me to the beach, and we just did some chatting, catching up, and painted the landscape in front of us. It was really fun. I don't do stuff like that too often where I draw around other people anymore, but it was really refreshing. And at the end of the year, I started to participate in some of the Draw This in Your Styles that were going around on Instagram. So this first one kind of looked about like this. This woman holding a key around her necklace, trying to escape or being engulfed by these like ghostly hands. And I thought that was really cool. It made me think of a lot of 60s and 50s horror movies that were set in Victorian England, so I was like, that's totally a vibe I can go with. But oopsie daisies, I have a half an hour before I need to book it. No, I have an hour before I have to book it to work. So I sketched some thumbnails. Maybe I could do something with some of the horse drawings that I've done and make it really dynamic and interesting, unlike a lot of the other ones, which were kind of sticking to portraits. But I didn't have much time, and I did this tiny thumbnail, and I was like, that's weird and cool, so I'll do that. Despite it missing the key element of the hands, I think it turned out pretty good. I just used marker for her large outline shadow, and then the rest is just a bunch of different graphite pencils that I had lying around, all the way down up to 8B, I want to say. But yeah, this took literally like 50 minutes, and it turned out well. Usually my work takes a really long time. I'm kind of a slow artist, but this was fun. I didn't win anything from the Draw This in Your Style, but I had a really great time, and I use that piece once in a while for like promotional stuff. So, and then another Draw This in Your Style, also in graphite and ink. This time, oh my gosh, who drew the original? I follow him and his twin brother on Instagram. I want to say like Jason Illustrations, or maybe his twin Benji. Both do really amazing ink drawings, and it was about like this lady in a crown with wings, and it was like, it was titled Forever Alone, and I think it had that written somewhere on the illustration. And I just really wanted to completely flip that. I wanted it to be something that echoed it, so very different, but it still had that same composition, which I sketched up here. So it had that, starlights in the background, this scooping up, and I wanted to take that wing shape on the character herself and shift it into this wonderful, like, lush jungle thing. I don't even know why, but I just thought it would be really cool. And the snake that she was holding was just looking at her with a lot of love, and she was holding it very tenderly. And I thought it was sweet, and so did So did he, which was really nice. He commented and said it was cute, and I was very thankful that it still kind of came across as, definitely inspired by that. But that was a really good way for me to get back into more fuller pieces versus just a bunch of sketches. Is just taking inspiration or compositions from other people and just seeing what I can do with it. Let's see. We're into February now, 2019, and still all about that hashtag cowboy life. Because Flesh.png, who is an amazing artist, and I have some of their stickers, which I'll probably potentially put on the next sketchbook I start. I was drawing a bunch of cowboys too, and that was a year after I had learned about Mark Maggiori's paintings, which were stunning landscapes of, cowfolks, fellas on horses and such. So I was toying around with like comic idea or something, or like a full illustration with Arthur and John again, but again, just wound up doing some sketches. And it was kind of snowy at that time because where I used to live, that was where we would get our snow in January, February, March. Not so much December, maybe once, but we got a lot of snow last year in Seattle, actually. It was unusual. And then these 3 drawings are all the same image, an image I took of snow on some of the trees. And then this was based on a photograph I found. I was gonna try to pass it off as Red Dead fan art, but I didn't get very far into rendering it or anything. And then I was like, well, I'm still in the mood for fan art for whatever reason, and I think at this point I had completely finished my Honkfest West drawings, or paintings, so those were done and sent off to him. We were just working on like contract stuff at that point. So I was like, Charles is really calming and kind of a nice presence here in this game. So I did some sketches of him to try to get his face right, and did a final composition sketch, but I still didn't feel like, I knew what I was doing with the colors that I had, so I did a study here of him directly, didn't really like it, and then did a study based on Carl Van Vechten's photographs. So these were not exact or very, as you can see, very accurate drawings per se, but it was more about what kinds of colors are underneath and on top of brown and black skin tones. I'm really bad at skin tones in general, just because I used to do way more cartoony stuff with my watercolor, and used to literally use a Crayola palette that was free in my classroom. So that helped a lot, and I felt a lot more comfortable. So like for this one, it was a cool background, but there was a lot of warm oranges contrasting the really gray blue colors that were underneath. This was more neutral, this was more orange, and this had some like magentas in it, and that helped me a lot, I think. I often find myself doing that when I feel like I'm tackling a piece that's above my skill level. Pretty much anything I draw is above my skill level because I always want to improve. But doing studies specific to what I'm about to jump into has helped me tremendously, instead of just aimlessly doing it. I don't know, are there any questions so far in the chat? I don't really I don't see a whole lot of other people, but as I'm going, if you need me to speak up or better explain something, or you want a better view, just let me know, man. I'll be happy to. But this is the final one I did of Charles. I spent a lot of time on it. I actually used white gouache for some of the snow and to blur and kind of create a foggy background that I sometimes see in the sky when it's snowy out. Just because sometimes the cloud cover gets really low and I like the way that looks. So I spent time doing that. But actually on this section here where the fog from his breath is, I just didn't render as much for the watercolor. So everything else got a lot darker, including like all the details on his jacket. But otherwise, the white gouache was not there, and I'm so proud of that, which is really nerdy, but turned out good. Then I again wanted a new icon, but couldn't decide on anything. And then wanted to draw Javier, who I really liked also from Red Dead Redemption. I think these two are still pretty cute drawings, but I never really wound up doing any other final illustrations for them. And then let's see, yeah, so this is early March. It's when last year we got a bunch of snow in the Pacific Northwest. People were calling it like Snowmageddon, which is kind of silly because where I live now, you know, it's like 10 degrees colder than what it was, and we've had about that much snow consistently on the ground this whole month, or last month, off and on, I guess. But, you know, in an area that's super hilly and not really built, to have 3 feet of snow hanging around on the ground for a full week, that's pretty overwhelming. So this was a spot close to where my bus stop in elementary school was. It was just really pretty trees everywhere, and I remember I spent 3 hours all wrapped up just walking around taking photos of all the beautiful snow all over the trees and the ground and the grass and the plants and the branches. And I just felt so peaceful, and I wanted to try to capture some of that. And then this was a house that I always admire because of the little red trim on it. I just think it's cute. It's a very short walk from my house, and about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even more, when I was a kid, whoever used to live in that house previously, or if it's the same people, I have no idea, but they used to have chickens in their yard that you could hear sometimes. So sometimes early in the morning, I would hear the rooster in the morning calling from their house, or possibly just around their house. I don't know if it was this house, but I assumed it was. It's not the most rendered painting, but I am still very fond of it, and I use it a lot, again, to promote some of my work online. And I think it's just this one that's also as a sticker in print on my Redbubble store, if you should be so inclined. These are in pencil, so it's difficult to see, but again, more just sketchy stuff, practicing the human body, trying to find motion where the shadows tend to lie on the muscles or in the crevices between muscles. And again, just kind of getting a rhythm for how the body moves and shifts, and, you know, classic practice stuff. And then I was like, well, I want to play D&D someday, and it's still early March. I'm still watching Critical Role all the time. Around that time last year, I was watching Adventure Zone, or listening to Adventure Zone. So I was trying to design my own character, and it was a cute story or something, I think, that I had, and it was good practice to try to draw multiple figures throughout time and just kind of figuring things out. And for the first time in a while, actually messing with storytelling and character making. And then that week, I went to Emerald City Comic Con. I went out to Seattle, and I went to my first convention, and it was so much fun. And I spent so much time on the main floor on a Sunday that by the time Artist Alley closed, I had a total of maybe 5 minutes there, which is unfortunate because there were so many fantastic artists that I've been following on Instagram and Twitter for a long time that were tabling. But I was so inspired after being there because I saw a bunch of Critical Role cosplays, and I was like, oh man, I should try to do fan art for real for the show again. And I have the idea to like draw a lot of the Vexes hanging out, and a lot of the Vaxes, you know, a lot of the different versions of like Beauregard of some of the same characters hanging out together. But then I remembered how really hard it is to draw people in a group, and I changed my mind about doing that. So I did some clothing studies the following day, and then a few days later, just kind of working out buildings, I guess, and a map for some reason. I don't really remember what I was doing here, but I was still kind of working on a character idea that I had. Oh, but by this point, my friend Andy, Andy.img, Andy.image on both Twitter and Instagram, amazing artists, go follow them, said they wanted to DM for us. So I was like, oh man, I gotta really like build a character. He wound up looking pretty much nothing like this, but it was a lot of fun to just kind of practice. I did wind up keeping the idea of like secret knife and cane and also older person character and some of the same fashion sensibilities, I guess. So just like, I don't know, medieval goth or whatever. But I had a hard time I felt like I was kind of getting in a rut with drawing the same character over and over and not having them look too different, so practice on how I want and what features to exaggerate and whether I really wanted to play an orc or a half orc or if I wanted to do like a tiefling or a drow or something. So different faces, more practice. And then I had my final idea for who is now Leland, who I play as and love quite a bit, even though we've played like 2 games because everybody's in college and so busy. So this was a final sketch that I really liked the lighting of, and went on to do a final illustration, character illustration for him, which is somewhere in here actually. But because I don't know how to draw armor or shiny things, I was like, bam, study time, Pinterest, what you got? Where's the shiny things? And I actually did live stream these 2 or all 3 on Instagram that year in mid-April now. I think they turned out good. They're a bit technicolor, but it was fun. Oh yeah, so here was the initial drawing I did of my character Leland, and then I scanned it and went in Photoshop and readjusted some of the things digitally, and then also you can kind of see I went along in pencil with it to get it finally adjusted, and then traced onto my final paper to be drawn. And I would just doodle here and there. This is a sketch that I want to finish for my DM of one of their player characters who's also a warlock. Like, oh look, yeah, you can see the final image right there next to you of this on the live stream, on the Twitch live stream at least. But yeah, that was my DM's character that I want to someday draw the final image of. You can't really see it very well because I drew on ink on the opposite side. So this was May, and then I actually had I don't know how to phrase it, gotten sick, gotten surgery from May and was recovering well into June, but well into August was about the time that I felt like I was done recovering, even though I'm still healing and such, but I could do most of the things that I needed to at that point. So this section was initially from some like part of a garden that was near where I worked or something, and then I just kind of like free-handed a bunch of stuff in my spare time from, you know, May until June, just trying to keep up with drawing. This is some dried flowers that I made because I was in so much pain I couldn't really draw, unfortunately. And then life was starting to get busy again because I was working again, so this was, and then still had to visit the doctor I went to a few times. So on my rides to and from when I was on my own and not being driven by my very nice dad, thank you, I would draw what I was seeing. So some of the harbor, some of the ocean and the trees behind this little fancy rich person house, some of the coastline, a buoy, you know, a woman commuting on her way back. And this was all from June. And this was separate. This was at a different park when I was hanging out with my friend Siri again. and some more of the dried flowers that I do, that I made, which is actually this particular ink drawing is available in two versions, square and a circular shape, on my Redbubble shop as a variety of items, including stickers, shirts. So that's there. I really liked it. I did a lot of ink drawings when I was younger, and I kind of miss doing it, but I also really like rendering more in watercolor now. And then again, this was just me trying to get back into drawing despite knowing I would be moving soon. I was working a lot, cleaning up the house a lot, as my parents were working pretty much up until last minute when they were leaving their house, so I took a little extra time off and just did a bunch of the cleaning around our house. So I barely made time to draw, as you can see from the next few pages. Again, more park doodles with my friend Faye. Just trying to do more observational stuff, getting an understanding for natural shapes. And yeah, more ferry boat drawings as I was leaving. I don't remember where I was going, but this guy I really liked and is edited on my Redbubble shop, of course, because it's a good drawing. And some more observational painting and sketches while my friend was playing Pokemon Go. And the last time I was in Seattle, I went to the Seattle Art Museum with my best friend Leo and had such a peaceful time and was so deeply inspired and really exhausted. It was a lot of walking around, but I caught one photo while they were resting on a bench in front of a painting from an Australian Indigenous artist woman. I don't remember her name or what the piece looked like, but here's a rough rendition of it, and then my friend Lil. It was just a really peaceful moment, and I knew I wasn't going to see them for a long time, so I just kind of sketched that later. And I remembered, what's it called? Art Fight existed, and I wanted to join, but I didn't have time, so I drew half of one character, flipped it, submitted it, and then never went on the website again that year. Some drawings from friends while we were just thinking out loud. And then I moved to where I am now. And this was the first thing that I drew when we got here on August 9th. Our apartment wasn't cleaned yet, not for another 4 days, I think. So we were just stuck at a park for several hours that hot sunny summer day. So I just drew, and then we checked into a hotel for a few days after that and just kind of hung out. And by the time I was back into what is my current apartment, I wanted to draw more Critical Role, so here's Jester again in kind of a redesign attempt that I tried to do. So she's still got like a leather skirt and a leather bodice for her leather armor, but she had a shaved nap and little shaved nape of her neck and like a really cute frilly dress and frilly socks, and it was fun. And I wanted to do more redesign things with her in kind of like a modern setting, but it just never came to fruition. And then here's another drawing of Leland. And then this page, let's see, we're still the last day of August. I rediscovered some pens and remembered an illustration I'd done in Copic markers in 2016, I want to say, of this comic idea I had, so I tried to sketch it out and thumbnail some pages. I got like 30 pages in, started to design some of the stickers on, the character's name is Astronaut, because it's an astronaut, but with only an eye, and is like some sort of weird, amorphous, not real alien thing. Yeah, and I tried to think of comic idea, a way to pursue the comic, but just never went through with it for whatever reason. So more sketches, again, Leland, random YouTube people, random stuff from dailysketch.net just to keep a habit because I was kind of struggling with that still and hadn't used watercolors in months, so tried to get back to it as I was studying. And I was really busy and I just was doing stuff around the house and trying to move in and get used to things. And I baked some bread and I thought it looked pretty, so I painted some bread that I baked in September, right at the end. And I don't like how this looks anymore, but it was fun to do at the very least. I tried to do a 3 emoji challenge, which was going around on Twitter and Instagram quite a bit, where users would comment or submit or DM 3 emojis to use. So my friend Andy sent off a robot emoji, a flower, and a puzzle piece. So my first thought was, I don't know, abandoned robot growing some plants out of them. My mom sent me one which was kitten paw, prince, snow, and a donut, and I was gonna draw like a rogue cat, like a rogue tabaxi or a Khajiit type character stealing some donuts from a store. And I was like, hee hee, real cat just sitting in a donut shop would be cute. But I never drew it all the way. And my friend Fergus sent me just 3 weird expressions. So I was like, okay, what can I do with this? And I struggled with ideas for a while, but the first thing that really came to mind was what did come to mind? Oh yeah, like those drama masks, that's the word I'm looking for. So I made Fancy Costume Lady with her face being the typical sad drama mask, and then I tried to I was gonna do more in that traditional style, but I was like, the idea wouldn't get across very well. Again, watercoloring on paper that's not meant for watercolor doesn't do much good, but it was fun. I'm gonna pause a second to get some water. I've been talking for way too long. Sorry, hang on. And apparently my Instagram stream worked, but it died off at some point. I got so distracted looking at my own stupid sketchbook that I know, but like the back of my hand, that I stopped looking up at where the Instagram one was going. So I'm gonna try to pull that back up as well while I drink some water, take a minute to stop talking. But I hope this has been somewhat interesting so far. I've never really done a video like this before. Okay, Twitch, that's break time enough. So again, I was working on three emoji challenges at this point, and my friend Siri had sent a skull, a crown, and a fern. And I liked the idea a lot, and I liked the final sketch more than the final painting, which I did separately from here. But I liked this one quite a bit. Sorry if you hear excited dog noises in the background. My sister just came home for the day. But I'm almost done, so where I'm at is just more figure drawing and practice. And then see if I can find it again. Where was it? That thumbnail I showed you earlier, here it is. I finally decided I'm going to continue through with the drawing, so here's the final sketch and the thumbnail. And I'm actually working on painting this one right now, so hopefully I'll finish that before the end of next week. But yeah, that was drawn in November, and then I just got really into what was that spin-off? Undeadwood. I got really into Critical Role's Undeadwood, so I wrote down some of their dream sequences and wanted to illustrate that. Because westerns are cool. So I have some thumbnails from that, and I did finish this one, which is not on my Redbubble store, but I should put it there. And then some scrapped thumbnail ideas for other dreams that I didn't go through. And then my sister was like, hey, I'm painting minis a bunch. Please draw my cool goblin who runs a mini painting shop. And I was like, hell yeah. So I did that. And this is the final sketch for it. And again, because this paper is really shitty, I just used actual watercolor paper for that. So it's not in here, but some sketching around. And then I did some fabric studies, actually on stream, on December 30th, just to kind of get an idea of where flow and weight goes, because I'm always really bad at that and struggle with clothing characters, like hardcore. But that was pretty much the last things that I drew in 2019. Some weird medieval shoes. And then at the beginning of this year, I drew a cat version of Link from Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time for a coworker's Secret Santa. There's like a couple pages that are blank that's left in the sketchbook, but quite often I find that when I am done, I am ready to be done. There's a lot of talking, but that is my entire May 2018 to, December 2019 sketchbook. Hopefully there was something interesting about that for y'all, but I'll try to get a better handle on a regular stream time. It might just wind up being once a week because of work, unfortunately, but there we are. I'm probably still gonna film and post a silent flip through to put on my social media, just because this is gonna be stupid long. I think it's been like 40 minutes already, but oh well. If you missed the stream, it'll be archived also on my YouTube channel, same username, NADraws. But yeah, if you stopped by, thank you very much. I'm gonna call it quits because my throat hurts from talking nonsense all day, so keep drawing in 2020 and maybe do another flip through like this.